Hello everyone, welcome to the episode 93 of SoLeadSaturday. Our today's guest, Levene, is a creative storyteller with significant experience in animation and immersive experience design. He now brings his skills and imagination to the augmented, virtual, and mixed reality formats, collectively known as extended reality or XR. His primary focus at XRApplied is the development of partnerships for toys and gaming, real estate, and healthcare application of XR technologies. A product evangelist and creative problem solver with a strong passion for emerging technologies, Luke is always the first mover when unlocking new commercial markets. Wow, this looks great. So let's just join me and welcome Luke on Solid Saturday, and let's hear more about his career journey. How did he find his area of interest and managing to lead that? Hey, hi Luke. Very happy to have you on the show and really appreciate all your time and consideration being on the show.
Hi, lovely to meet you. It's an absolute pleasure. How do I pronounce your name? Vaishali.
Yeah,
Vaishali?
Shali, you're good.
Thank you.
So, actually, I'm really looking forward to this episode because you work in the augmented and the virtual reality. So, this is definitely one of the areas of in demand as well nowadays. So, we would definitely look forward to learn more from your career journey. So, our first segment is more about passion or the interest. Here, I'm just going to ask you, how did you find your interest in this specific field and what motivates you to be there where you are today?
So, I'm just full screening. I am someone that likes to follow intuition,
Mm-hmm.
intuition and flow. So, feeling things. I would say if I can kind of wind back the clock a little bit and go to um, the first seed that was planted for me. I have always been, I would say my first passion was animation, the
Oh.
love for the pure animation. So I actually studied, I firstly went to business school.
Mhm.
I had quite a traditional, I come from a very conservative family and I come from a very traditional conservative background. And my first break with kind of the status quo, so to speak, was when I told my family after my first year of business school that I'd like to make cartoons. And actually, I wanted to make traditional hand drawn animation. It was the one thing that I really connected to. As a child, I used to spend a lot of time drawing comic books, and that was my way of expressing
Mhm.
myself. I wasn't very good at expressing myself and finding my voice, but comic books really helped me connect to something true for me.
Mhm.
And many years later, I went to boarding school, and and then the kind of art and creativity and storytelling wasn't very well regarded in my particular circle,
Mhm.
and people felt that it was more important that I went into more of a business career, a lawyer, law, pursued law, business, politics, medicine. If it was really that was kind of the or work in the family business. So I went to business school. I followed the particular business. I went to business university, and then within a year, it just felt very off. And with some inner reflection, I had a sense that what I want to do. I wanted to go back to my roots and make cartoons. So I went to a traditional animation school that taught the old Disney way of telling stories. And I did that for 4 years. And that led me into a career as a multidisciplinarian. So
Mhm.
working in all sectors of animation, 2D, 3D, stop motion, VFX, working on music videos and
Mhm.
commercials, and then
Mhm.
doing animation series, and then kind of also pivoting a bit further. Then that process of curiosity, which was, I guess, begun with kind of exploring what is it that I feel connected to, then led me
Mhm.
to exploring documentary filmmaking. I'm
Wow.
telling you that. So I went into documentary filmmaking, and I actually lived with. I was very interested in anything that challenged the traditional ways of doing things. So at the
Mhm.
time, I was quite inspired by protests, people who were living and protesting for causes. I was young; I'd never seen that before. It was new to me. The idea that you could kind of really kind of stand up for something you believed in. So I actually followed a group of anarchists, what was prescribed by media at the time were anarchists, but actually when you met them, they're very sweet people, lovely, some lost, some more with a purpose, but these kind of group of eccentric nomadic types have come together to protest against the liquefied natural gas pipeline that was being built through Wales, in the Welsh valleys in England, a beautiful place called Brecon Beacons, and there was a huge construction of a multi-billion pound oil and gas construction through the woods. And this group of 20 protesters had come together to stop this because they felt very strongly that this was going to damage the natural environment. And so I chose to follow them. And it was also my first exploration into what direct action was and how one could maybe stand up for something and learn a bit about different worlds, different cultures, different ways of living and doing things outside of the norm. And that journey, that was a 2 years. So that just flowing and feeling things and not really asking too many questions. People would be like, why are you doing this thing? I was like, I don't know, it just feels good. You know, why are you living with a protest? I lived up a tree for 6 months, you know, and it was beautiful. I made this feature film that ended up being a lot shorter. And then that kind of led me into immersive storytelling. So the next big thing was like filmmaking was, wow, okay, I can go out there and I can feel things, I can connect the things. And then a big revelation for me was 2008 when an immersive theatre group called Punch Drunk, who have actually recently partnered with Niantic, which is Niantic are important because they're probably leading the way in augmented reality today. And they've now partnered up with the most progressive immersive theatre company called Punch Drunk to create what will be the future of AR storytelling. And if you've ever experienced a Punch Drunk show and you've had immersive is now a bit of a buzzword, but back in 2008, people weren't really talking about immersive storytelling. It was new. No one really understood what it was. And the idea that have you heard of immersive theatre? Is that something you're familiar with?
No, I'm not familiar with, but that would be great to see, like, learn more about it.
So the big shift, I'm trying to give you context. And if there's anything you don't follow or get, please stop me. But a big shift was traditional animation to physical filmmaking. So actually you actually you go into the world to the idea that then you can create physical spaces that you can live and explore and interact with in the physical world. So immersive storytelling is really like theater, where you're just observing something, you're a spectator. In immersive theater, you're part of the action, you're actually immersed in this world and you're walking through a world and everything's being created to embellish this universe that you've popped into. And Punch Drunk did beautiful things with Mask of the Red Death, which is an Edgar Allan Poe adaptation, and it's quite dark, a bit morbid, and they basically broke up the narrative of these stories, and you explored the books or the poems in a kind of in a way that felt like you were within this universe that Edgar Allan Poe had conjured up in his mind, and you had to solve clues and explore different spaces and interact with the actors, and everyone was wearing these masks. And that was a revelation to me because I was like, wow, I'm lost in this world. So suddenly animation became less appealing, and this idea that I could create new worlds or new realities took over. And that led me to building what was one of London's first immersive theatre nightclubs, restaurant nightclubs in 2010. And it was it was in Bond Street, actually. It was in just by Selfridges in Bond Street. If you know London, Bond Street, and then you've got Selfridges, it's quite a famous department store. And next to Selfridges, there's this little door that you kind of enter into, and you'd be like, well, this looks like a derelict building site. As you kind of journey down the space, it would open up, and then there would be this indoor colonial greenhouse from the 1920s where everyone was in costume, and it was very theatrical. There were performances and bands and music, and you're part of this new reality. And it really felt like that. And it was very, and it was amazing to see how people had a real appetite for this type of experience. And it really became it was a kind of an overnight success. We had, like, it was lovely to serve, Woody Harrelson would turn up. Every day was like, well, suddenly celebrities are coming in from all over the place, and you're famous for 5 minutes in this setting. And it's quite fun and playful. And actually, after that, I went into real estate. I actually ended up working my family business in real estate, but the seed was already planted. So when VR, and this is where it comes back to, when VR really started to take shape in 2014, and this is the big thing happened with Facebook bought Oculus from Parmalathy, and then at the time VR was pretty much unknown. It was very much a buzzword amongst the software and hardware development communities, but outside of that, people really weren't sure what was this thing, although it had been around since the 80s actually. We'd experienced it in arcades, but what Parmalathy had done was a revolution for I guess home VR entertainment. And Oculus and Facebook saw the opportunity, and they jumped on board this train. And when I got wind of this, I was also at a bit another crossroad of my life where I was like, right, family business doesn't feel right. I was again in this space where I still felt like an artist, but I'm also working in real estate with the family. So how do I consolidate real estate and my desire to create immersive experiences? And then when VR kind of presented itself, I saw an opportunity with virtual reality to tell the real estate story, to showcase new developments, new projects, new buildings in a new way. I was like, well, we can bring we could bring real estate to these virtual spaces, and I can give people an experience of the development that they could potentially buy before they buy. You know, it was very simple. My mind was quite simple, but I just saw a trend before it really happened. And it was actually, so for me, it felt like the low-hanging fruit for entering the VR space, which is really just about showcasing real estate in a completely new way. And there's and that's just that prop tech and in the virtual reality space has become huge, and it's grown exponentially, and now potentially it's going to be $1 billion business. The Matterport is leading the way, and Matterport are valued at $2 billion, and they're the guys in it. And now there's companies and they were trying to. Now there's the metaverse that's coming, and everyone wants to, I guess, digitize all of the physical spaces and that's kind of. But at the time when we began, there was no. I mean, I went to the first conferences I went to for developers for real estate who are building new developments. They looked at this and like, what are you talking about? VR? Well, first, they had no idea what it was, so they didn't see the value of it, and they didn't know why they would need it in their own industry. And my job was to evangelize this new technology to the real estate industry, to showcase how this technology was going to radically transform how they did business. And that was my entry point.
Wow.
And that came from my experience. So it was very much about feeling my way there, really. I couldn't have told you that was the end point, but the process of following intuition leads you to a convergence.
Yeah, so this is very valid point actually. Experience teaches you a lot, and the way you mentioned, like, it started with like working in our organization and getting away from that mundane thing and not enjoying it, and knowing that you are no longer enjoying it and exploring the different areas, and finally finding out and ending up with your area of interest. So that happens a lot more actually, when people get into the organization. And one of the motto that we have through this podcast or the show is that, building that organizational culture as well, where everyone gets an opportunity to actually explore, and they will not get stuck into like a particular career path, and they will get that opportunity actually as per their interests. So that is something we are also trying to accomplish, because always it is not possible for everyone to follow their heart and do it in a way.
I challenge this statement though. I challenge the statement because why is it not possible for everyone to follow their heart?
Yeah, sometimes it happens that people are a lot more stuck with their family cultures, or they have the responsibilities where they cannot afford to have that financial risk, being the responsible person or the only person who is kind of a provider for their families. And I think a lot more families, like a lot more countries have that kind of a family structure as well, where rather than individualism, it is a lot more getting that responsibility to carry forward. And sometimes you are following that, but I just feel that we can cope up with that with the organizational culture or the structure as well, to get that particular path and making that person eligible to move around within the organization for personal growth. So
I would love to see that happens more.
Yeah,
actually.
that change.
I feel that there is a possibility for that, and we could, that in itself is a conversation that's separate. And we could discuss the whether it is possible, someone in a family and people coming from different backgrounds or communities, and how could one become more aligned to truth when they have these
Yeah.
pressures of certain responsibilities that they're carrying, or that might infringe on, or also something maybe cultural, political, whatever's going on in the country that might infringe on the sense of freedom or ability to follow
Yeah.
their own path.
I
It's
think
a
side
really
hustling is also one of the areas actually, when you are working, you are earning full time, and plus you start doing the side hustling where you can convert that side hustle into, into the full time in future, depending upon how you explore and how you grow. So that is also one of the ways actually, where you can find the way to follow your heart. So thank you so much for sharing, and it's truly inspiring actually, because you have pointed out all the details how you led your area of expertise, like end up finding it and then now you are leading it. So thank you so much for sharing. Moving towards our next segment, which is more about questions from the audience, and under that we have our first question, which is about virtual and augmented reality. So how large will the virtual and augmented reality consumer markets get?
So the first prediction was there were going to be 1 billion headsets sold by 2020, well, which didn't happen. But that was I think that was very much a promotional piece. Now you've got different points of view. I think the last thing I heard was 2027, 1 billion people will be in VR, and you've got the big players around the space. For me, it's a third big revolution, the third big internet revolution. Let's say first you had the internet, then you had social media,
Mm-hmm.
which was the second big revolution, and then the VR is going to be the third big revolution, which is going to fundamentally, and VR and AR or
Mm-hmm.
mix extended realities, and this is something that we do. We have our company's XRApplied, and we build new products. There's a little plug there, but we build systems. So we're kind of trying to identify trends in different verticals and say,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that we can do to drive this mass adoption and to help people transition from traditional to virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're kind of following these trends, it's the revolution is happening now. I mean, the metaverse is coming. If you've seen the movies like Ready
Yeah.
Player One, or I mean, there's plenty to look at. It's the ones that come to Minority Report where they are, and plenty of things on just to give a sense of what the future might look like and how people might consume these experiences. But consume for me is always a bit. I don't like consuming because one becomes a passive spectator, and they're not taking.
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea that we become more passive is a concern for me, because I think we have to be more. These technologies should empower us to be more proactive, more interactive, more engaged with life,
Mm-hmm.
and to really feel like we are in the driving seat. They should empower us somehow, not sedate us. If we're sedated by these technologies, then they
Mm-hmm.
fail, in my humble opinion.
Okay.
So, in answer to your question, it's the third. It's the internet all over again,
Uh-huh.
but in a virtual world,
Mm-hmm.
in a virtual
Okay.
setting, or
So
reality.
yeah. So one more question we have along the same line is how can you digitize a physical element, action, or experience, or digitize all three?
A physical. Okay, so a physical space. Well, companies like Matterport are doing that. They're
Mm-hmm.
digitizing real estate using
Mm-hmm.
LiDAR scanners, which are now embedded into actual mobile phones. So
Mm-hmm.
the next generation of Apple phones will have embedded sensors that allow you to digitize physical space, read the. Well, this is what AR is already doing. So this technology is already to go into how the technology works. You'll have to talk to a software developer who's building these systems. I couldn't go into details, but the technology is embedded into future smartphones and smart devices and other. So, I mean, Google Earth is a perfect example of digitizing the whole world, right? It's just
Yeah.
using satellites and
Yes.
sensors just to capture all 3D data, and it's and then the physical body. Well, you've got mocap, motion capture.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of games today, companies like Viacom are using mocap.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, ILM, industrial light. Most films today, when you look at VFX or creature animation, like Lord of the Rings, is capturing physical movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Gollum or King Kong or Star Wars. Most of that is a lot of the characters you see are already captured through motion capture. Most games today are using motion capture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's capturing movement in real time, and then it's like, what can you do with that? How can you manipulate it? Even theater, actually. The Is it the Royal Shakespeare Society? They're using motion capture, some of their most recent theatrical experiences to create otherworldly characters to bring them into the actual
Mm-hmm.
experience as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Does the Broadway shows also use it, or?
Broadway shows too, and they're using
Yeah.
holograms. There was and you had then you had the kind of 2-packs of core Michael Jackson kind of holographic experience that came out. That was really quite cool. And again, it's a mixture of different technologies. There isn't like a specific kind of off-the-shelf product yet. There is a customization aspect that has to come into play.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's in answer to some of your.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Next segment that we have is more about fun segment or the relaxation segment. And here I'm going to give you 3 keywords which are more associated with your profile. And you have to just tell me whatever comes to your mind. Like it can be a replacement keyword, it can be an abstract definition, or after hearing all those 3 words, you want to come up with something creative, linking those 3 words. That would be great as well. So are you ready?
Yes, I'm absolutely ready.
Yeah. So the first keyword that we have is digitalization.
Mm-hmm.
What
comes to mind when
when you hear the word?
Digitization. First thing that comes to mind when you think of digitization is to digitize the physical, putting everything to bring the physical into the digital. Digitization. The first thing that comes to mind. Digitization. So we digitize to digitize physical space, everything.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And then second keyword that we have is animation.
The first thing that comes to mind is Disney, because but animation, creativity, freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And
Freedom.
any specific animation software tools you would like to mention here, like for the audience?
Animation tool, Maya, Unreal Engine. My passion is traditional animation, so pencil.
Animation, yeah, that you mentioned. I have already.
I would say the pencil because it's the most direct way of
And that's
creating.
more artistic as well, right? Creative and artistic. Because you do everything by manual thing.
Do everything by manual. You even use it by hand. You don't even use the word by
That definitely
traditionally.
requires skill, yeah. So thank you so much for that. And third keyword that we have is storytelling.
Storytelling. Possibility.
Why do you think so?
Because with storytelling we have or ancestry. That's a nice one. Storytelling or storytelling, sacred. Because I like the sacred. So here's something that's for me. Storytelling has been a beautiful way to preserve our most sacred wisdom teachings from our ancestors, and it helps us connect back to our human lineage. So it's like almost it's a way of unraveling time and building that relationship between past and future. We've needed stories to really help connect us to who we are and why we're here. The big questions, actually. Stories have really helped us resolve some of the biggest questions that have plagued humanity and helped really simplify big ideas or really complex ideas.
Yeah, and that is definitely one of the a lot more in demand skill as well when it comes to
storytelling.
Yeah, storytelling. It's very important skill actually. So
it's a wonderful skill to be able to tell stories and share. It connects us. It's one of the bridges between the human experience. It helps me and you relate more deeply through storytelling.
Yep, yep. So thank
Sure.
you so much for being impromptu in this section. And we are moving towards the next segment, which is little more exploring your career, work, and volunteering. Here we have one question under that. So tell us more about XRApplied and more about uncommon emerging XR applications to medical, real estate, toys, and game industries. You talked a bit about it in the earlier segment, but we would love to learn more about it.
So so XRApplied, we're really so we are a small team of specialists. Well, I know, I guess that we have essentially we have a really deep understanding of the AR and VR sector, and our approach is really to leverage the XRA toolkit.
Mhm.
So really a collection of best in breed B2B XR solutions and apps that can be applied to businesses and business
Mhm.
models to maximize benefits for the end user. And really, our passion with XR technologies is to help businesses positively impact their communities and
Mhm.
also the world. So we want to improve areas of like education, and also ways to
Wow.
provide net zero emissions and help new businesses showcase their products, and we believe it can go much further. And there's also kind of the process of like what we do, which is more in-depth consultation, so we can work with any business and really kind of identify what technologies support that business and their unique requirements. We're looking at B2B solutions, so the idea that our solutions should be scalable and be
Mhm.
carefully applied to your business model to maximize the value of XR,
Mhm.
and we understand that also the technology is really agnostic. It's inherently flexible. So we build toolkits to apply to any sector of the market. And things that we build are like virtual catalogs. We have SDKs, so we can build the SDKs. We can build the unique application programs, so AIPs. What else do we do? So I mean, I guess our framework is really looking at kind of the process of ideation to
Mhm.
implementation, and also then building MVPs. So like
Mhm.
yeah, and the areas of interest. So like things. So I mean, from building flooring apps to tools for edutainment. So
Mhm.
things around gaming and plays.
Mhm.
Also kind of heritage, like I guess um, almost or preserving heritage sites. Like we actually did recently a virtual Berlin pre-Second World War, where you could visit the Brandenburg Gates and kind of see what Berlin might have been like in the 1930s, which is something. So it's like there's so many different applications um,
Mhm.
that, that 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 are there today. So, and things that are really interesting is something that I'm passionate about, something called sensory storytelling. So one of the things that we did in the past was sensory reality, which is not just audiovisual with VR, but integrating the other senses like smell, touch, taste, heat,
Oh, wow.
wind, and
Mhm.
biometric feedback
Mhm.
to create real-time response environments to your emotions, and the way you feel actually immediately impacts the experiences that you have.
Mhm. Wow.
Things like that.
Yeah, sounds
And
very interesting actually. Yeah.
that can be very helpful for things like
Uh-huh.
sensory storytelling to help people deal with things like trauma and mental
Mhm.
health issues and different disabilities, and to stimulate the mind. And there's lots of dementia, Alzheimer's. Uh,
Yeah. So it is a
there's
lot
lots
more
of use
purpose
cases.
driven as well, actually. You can establish some.
Purpose driven in that sector, and then realist. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah. And that's great purpose to have. Like you mentioned a couple of areas, right? Like trauma, disabilities, or education also you mentioned. So I think that is very much like a purpose driven area to be in.
Totally.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing. And we are moving towards little closure. And here we are just going to summarize any tips or advice to the aspiring students or the professionals who are going to build their career or looking this as their long-term career,
Hmm.
where they can grow and build their career further or consider that as the long-term career options. So would you like to give any specific tips or advice? You can
Well,
support your answer with like books or courses as well.
I would follow the kind of key people in the VR and AR space. I mean,
Mhm.
if you Google just Forbes list of 50 most influential people in VR, you'll get lists of every year they publish lists of who are the most influential people or who are the most influential companies, and just start to follow them, ideally on LinkedIn, trying to connect the people that are doing really amazing work on and right. People are super open in this industry. So we're very early days. So you'd be surprised how quick people are to share or to connect, follow podcasts on people who are doing great work in the space, and just really just don't be afraid to reach out and build those connections with people that you admire, just by saying, I really admire what you do. I'd like to learn more. Can you take 5 minutes to have a conversation? I don't know why people don't feel empowered to do that more. You know, if someone writes to me and say, I'd love to connect with you, a student or anything, I'm like, sure, lovely. I'd love to share what I've done and my experience. We you know, and there's so many most of the industry players these days are doing podcasts or are creating videos, a lot of people are writing their own books. I mean, it's like it's big area of self-promotion, and to have young people really connect to the work that we do is super it's really nice, actually. And to know that we can inspire a younger generation, and actually the best form of PR is word of mouth. So if you're inspiring people, then they are talking about you, they're sharing your story, and that's helping you build your own community, your own following as well. So it actually has a really important feedback loop. If you're doing podcasts, if you're creating videos like this, or if you're writing books, then actually it's super important to engage with your community. So everyone should feel very empowered to reach out, find out firstly who the most influential people are in the space, and then feel really empowered to reach out and connect with them directly through all of the different channels. And you could even create your own LinkedIn profile saying, an aspiring VR enthusiast wants to learn more, please connect. Please, I'd love to ask a few questions. Do you have a young guy who recently brought me on his podcast, just wanted to learn about the industry, so he created a whole podcast series just to talk to people. And then another guy did a newsletter, just talk. If you promote other people, it by default will promote you. There's a feedback loop that happens.
I also know the people, actually, who started the content creation as a hobby, and then now they do it full time, and their newsletter, and then the content, they sell it.
Totally, that's
So
creating
it's like
content. They're
they have been that
sharing.
much within 8 to 10 years that now they are selling that content, and you can take like a monthly subscription or yearly subscription kind of. So you never know, right, how you can monetize your work. So it's always
Today
okay to
online,
explore and
totally.
experiment. And this is very valid point, actually, as you mentioned, that reach out, actually. So if you reach out 10 people, it is always like taking that first step from your side, and then you will find somebody who can, would be happy to help you. So it is very, very important that you reach out first. And I would encourage, actually, people who are looking to get into this AR VR space or the animation space, definitely reach out to Luke and see for any help.
Plenty of other people they should reach out to, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people feel they need.
So thank you so much. And we are moving towards the closure, and it was really very fun chat, as well as learning more about your areas of expertise. So no doubt you are leading your areas of expertise. So in this particular section, we are talking leadership. So how would you describe your leadership style, and any specific leader that you always follow or admire, and why?
My leadership style is empathically driven. It used to be very dominating when I was younger, and I was more restricted, and I felt like we had to get things done. So I was moving a lot from adrenaline and like very masculine, like do, like very kind of like pushing people. And today I think empathy allows you to pull people through creating space, actually. So the leadership style that I'm more drawn towards is feeling, intuition, space, listening, inspiring, finding common ground, seeing how people can grow, and really supporting people to become the best version of themselves.
Wow.
For me, is much more attractive and creates a better it creates the world that I want to be part of. So that's something that I mean, I just try and do that in my daily life. I'm not by any means a great kind of business leader, but it's like for me the leading style that I'm more drawn towards is connection, community, and yeah, connection, community,
And would you like to share your personal favorites in the leadership space, and why do you admire them?
The leaders. So who I am really into leaders. So the different leaders. I mean, in business, you always look at the people at the top and who has. Every day, I'm going to be. I don't have. I'm sorry to not. Like a name that pops into my head is like, well, Elon Musk. What? And I'm like, well, that is why is he inspiring to me? Well, because Richard Branson, because these people have visionaries and they have these, and they set these crazy wild goals and they go for it, and that's obviously super inspiring. Like Richard, and they're thinking so far ahead. You know, someone in terms of in what they're doing. So Elon Musk obviously wants to build communities on Mars, and everything is connected to this future where he's creating. Automated systems like robots, like from his cars to everything to really create this future civilization on, which is really empowering. But it's for me when I'm inspired because of like vision, but I always think leaders who are more inward looking. Actually, I'm as a kind of someone who's more interested in inner work, like the inner verse as opposed to the outer verse. Like how far can we go to Mars? Well, actually, like how deep can we go into the human condition? I'm inspired by the greatest leaders, like the Buddhas, the Krishnas, the Christ, the avatars, the human avatars that have walked on the planet. These people actually today are more inspiring. John Kabat-Zinn, who brought mindfulness to the West. These are people that are really the Dalai Lama. I think super inspiring. You know, because from this place, so much space is created and so much can happen. And so much flow happens. There's a teacher called Muji, who is a non-duality teacher. I really love him because he teaches the path of Tao, which is almost the flow and the thing that's moving in flow. And there's Jason Silver. I love the way he does it. He bridges technology, spirituality, and consciousness. He's really a pioneer. He's got this great series on YouTube called Philosophical Shots of Awe. I love the inspiration because it adds so much energy, and from that energy, anything can unfold. You know.
That's great actually. And the one more important aspect that you mentioned while you're describing your leadership style, I would just repeat it because that is the best one. That the leader who can pull the best version of you, like who can encourage you to be a better version of yourself. So that is definitely a very good approach to have for any leader and lead his team further. And thank you so much for sharing it and being so wise, as well as sharing your areas of expertise. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Lovely to connect.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so this is all about Luke and the way he's managing to lead his area of expertise. Before we close, we have a closure quote from one of the successful entrepreneur, Mark Zuckerberg, which says, I think everyone would basically agree that we do not have the science or technology today to build the augmented reality glasses that we want. We may in 5 years or 7 years or something like that, but we are not likely to be able to deliver the experience that we want right now. So on that quote, we are closing today's episode. See you guys in the next episode. Until we meet, happy leading. Let's lead together.